Now, the Subway Final Word.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bill Phillips, and welcome to the Subway Final Word, the show that invites you, the fans, into the conversation. And you can get your opinion on TV right here every Sunday night. Tonight, we start with the red-hot Pittsburgh Penguins.
The big talk of our team in this run, if you go through, has been our start and how we come out in this building. And that's really propelled us a long way.
2-1.
The Penguins, with a 6-5 come-from-behind win at the Consol Energy Center today, their record-tying 12th consecutive win at home. Let's get started by introducing you to the panelists tonight from the Tribune Review. We're welcoming Dejan Kovacevic and Rob Rossi. And tonight's big topics, the Penguins will look at their coaching history to figure out who's the best. We'll talk Olympics and the possibility of trades down the line. We'll also be talking about Bill O'Brien and his Penn State legacy, plus the Steelers keeping a coordinator. Our first topic is about Dan Bylsma. He tied the franchise record for coaching victories today. He now has 232 wins. So we want to know, is Dan Bylsma the best coach in Penguins history? Rob Rossi, is Dan Bylsma number one on your list?
Well, look, I think Dan Bylsma is having his finest season, and I think for the most part around the NHL, even within the circles of some team management groups, he is very underappreciated. It's not easy to coach for a franchise that prizes offense as much as it does and gives as much authority to its best players. But to me, Bob Johnson won a Stanley Cup in his first and only year with the Penguins. He completely changed the directive of the franchise. He legitimized them behind the bench, and he took a team that had never really done anything together beyond win a playoff round and got it all the way through 4 while losing the first game of every series and beginning a year without Mario Lemieux. That was an outstanding coaching job. That said, Dan Bylsma's really, really impressed me this year with everything he's done to change this team defensively. And I think we're going to be talking about him for a long time here.
Dan?
Yeah, and unfortunately, we obviously weren't able to talk for a long time about Badger Bob since he passed after 1 year. I'd give my sentimental vote to him as well, Rob. No one can forget the impact that he had when he came into the Civic Arena the first time and looked up and said, "Where are all the banners? That's the first thing we need to do is put a banner up there." He changed the culture. He changed the way the Penguins thought of themselves. At the same time, Dan Bylsma is now going to the stage where he's statistically the greatest coach in Penguins history. And the thing that you have to like about him, and I agree with Rob's sentiment that he's having his best season, is that he has changed. He looked at mistakes that he made that a lot of us, myself included, pointed out last season in the Boston series. He went and he instituted the left wing lock. People keep attaching that to Jacques Martin. That's not right. Dan Bylsma put that in before Martin arrived. Bylsma should get credit for that. The Penguins look like a much more sound defensive team. No, not today. But in general, they've been much better, and he deserves a lot more credit for that than I think he's getting around here.
The other thing, Dejan, is the guy that gets lost in this conversation far too much is Mike Therrien, Michel Therrien, now that he's back in Montreal. You talk about changing the culture. This was a franchise that had no direction, that had no discipline.
Soft.
Exactly, Bill, soft. And he came within 2 wins of a significantly undermanned team, given the level of experience and the level of talent on that Detroit Red Wings roster in 2008, and he came within 2 wins of winning a Stanley Cup. And if he does, Dan Bylsma never gets a job. What Mike Therrien did to get his 125 wins here with that team and the talent he inherited was nothing short of the best single coaching job.
And I have to, Rob, I have to throw out another sentimental vote for Eddie Johnston, who in 1982 completely revolutionized the way power plays work in the NHL and took a way undermanned Penguins team and almost beat the Dynasty Islanders that year. EJ deserves credit for that too.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Keep your comments coming at home. You can find us on Twitter at WPXI Final Word, on Facebook at The Final Word. Jordan has an opinion about who's the best. He says not yet. Bylsma still has to win another Stanley Cup before he can be considered the best. Thanks for the comment, Jordan. Our next topic is staying with the Penguins. The Penguins will have several players on various Olympic teams fighting to win a gold medal, but not taking a break. The topic, will having a high number of Penguins in the Olympics hurt the team down the line? Rob, how much of an impact will the Olympics have on the Penguins?
Oh, I'm just trying to think. We did a whole segment about coaches and didn't mention Scotty Bowman, who won a cup and had an entire all the wins.
I thought about it, but none of the players liked it. So,
yeah, that's true.
That's it.
Look, I think the biggest problem for them, aside from potential injuries over in Sochi, to me is, what if Sidney Crosby goes to the Olympics, doesn't have Chris Kunitz or James Neal with him, and bears the brunt of Canada underachieving because they're going to blame him? What if Evgeny Malkin goes to the Olympics and has a terrible tournament, or Russia gets bounced early? How are these guys going to come back? I'm far more worried about their mental state. I'm far more worried about the challenge Dan Bylsma might have in getting these guys acclimated back to the way he needs them to play for Pittsburgh if, just by chance, in a gold medal game, he deploys Brooks Orpik and Paul Martin, and they shut down an Evgeny Malkin or a Sidney Crosby for a disappointing finish for one of those guys. So there are going to be egos, there are going to be challenges here, but I think for the most part, as long as they come back healthy, they're going to be fine, because you know what? They'll get the rest. And here's the one thing to consider. They are so far ahead in this division that they're going to be able to say to Crosby, you need a break, you need to take a couple days off, take it. And he's not going to say anything about that at this point, because he knows coming back from Sochi, the only thing he wants is that cup.
It's high intensity action. So even though it's only 6 games, there's the 3 round robin, and then there's the maximum, I should say, is 6 with quarterfinal, semifinal, and the gold medal game. It's 6 super high intensity, go through the wall games. And that's going to be a concern, especially for the Penguin Stars if they make it that far. Now you're adding 82 games to those 6 to a long playoff run, and yeah, it does get a little bit scary. But there are also benefits to it. We saw Sidney Crosby come back from Vancouver more confident than ever. That's something that he could take a lot of pride in and carry into Sochi again. I think Evgeny Malkin had a good tournament, even though the Russians had no goaltending. I don't think they're going to have any goaltending this time either. And think about a kid like Olli Maatta, who hasn't been officially been named to Team Finland, but will be. He goes over there and he plays against some of the best guys in the world. That's going to be a real pick-me-up for that kid.
Dan, real quick, I'm going to jump in for both of you guys very, very quickly. How much of a confidence builder has it been for Dan Bylsma? Not that he lacked confidence, but to be named the head coach of Team USA. Do you think it's impacted him in the way he's gone about his business?
Well, I think he needed something of a shot in the arm after Boston. I mean, let's face it, 90% of the talk after Boston was about the coaching, was about Claude Julien being brilliant and Dan Bylsma just being this guy that's sitting over there holding the clipboard. Dan Bylsma needed that shot in the arm. He got it. And did it allow him to maybe come into this season and strut a little bit? Yeah, that's fine, though.
Well, the other thing it did was it forced him to put a third assistant coach on this staff. I generally think the impact of Jacques Martin has been greatly overstated by most of the people around this team.
People want to overstate it, Rob, right.
But what Dan Bylsma, because of the responsibilities he's had with Team USA, has done this year is turn more authority over to his assistants, including Jacques Martin. I think that's good, because when they do need to sort of rally around each other in the tournament, that Stanley Cup tournament that is, he's going to be more open to hearing different voices. I think a coach who's open to hearing different voices in those situations is always a better coach.
And Jacques Martin's going to be telling him to match up lines, I can promise you that.
All right, guys, we need to take a time out. We've got a lot more to talk about with Penn State, the Steelers, and the Penguins' future this season. First, a comment on the Pens in the Olympics. Roger was on Facebook. He says, yes, with the packed schedule, they won't get the rest they need for a deep playoff run happening in 2010 versus Montreal. Thanks, Roger. The Subway final word. We'll be right back.